Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our first virtual town hall, which is co-hosted by the Alliance of Families for Justice and Senator Brian Benjamin and Assemblyman Michael Blake. And we are joined, and thankfully joined, by our board chair, Mr. Glover, who's joining us from the West Coast. This is a very important event for us at the Alliance of Families for Justice. We are a small nonprofit organization that was started in 2016. Our mission is to support, empower, and mobilize families who have incarcerated loved ones and people who have a criminal record. We are an organization that is formed and governed by people who are directly impacted. That includes our board members and our staff, and a wide host of volunteers from all over New York State. We're really excited today to be able to have an opportunity to hear from several of our family members who are going to speak to you about their direct experiences and those of their loved ones who are dealing with COVID-19 pandemic from behind the walls. Before we get into the actual presentations, I want to tell you that during the presentations, our first speaker, our first family member, will have to leave early. So we're going to change our program a little bit, and questions from our senator and assemblyman can be presented to her before she has to depart. With that in mind, I'm going to turn the microphone, the semi-microphone, over to Danny Glover, our board.
Good afternoon. How are you? What an honor to be a part of this extraordinary moment. Then we're able to talk about in this town hall and hear the stories of those who are most impacted by the incarceration of loved ones, men and women. You know, that's the family and the community. And the work the Alliance of Families for Justice has been, certainly, while only a short period of time, within a short period of time, has been recognized as the necessary work that needs to do to empower families, to empower communities around the issue of around the issues around the criminal justice system. So for me, Danny Glover, I've been involved in issues around the criminal justice system since I was very, very, very young. And certainly the work that men and women have done historically of trying to transform. We talk about reform, but transform and eliminate the prison system and do the kind of work that's necessary to bring our families in and make this a just country for all people as well. And certainly the Alliance of Families for Justice plays an instrumental role in doing that work. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny.
I tell you, this is kind of hard. You're looking at yourself in the camera, you know. For someone who looks at the camera, is around the camera all his life, most of his life, looking at himself in the camera is not the easiest thing to do. Thank you, though. You're welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you for those remarks. I'm going to tell you just a bit the names of the family members who will be speaking. And right after that, I'm going to introduce Senator Benjamin and Assemblyman Michael Blake, and they will make a few remarks, and then we'll move on to our family members. The first of the family members that you will hear from is Michelle. Michelle will then be followed by Carol H. Following Carol H will be Donna R. And then last but certainly not least, father and daughter, Frantz and Chastity. For those who may be wondering why we are not using last names, unfortunately, there's a reality of potential retaliation for loved ones who are incarcerated by people who aren't happy about what the truth that may be stated by the family members who will be presenting to you today. So to protect our loved ones who are inside, we are not using people's last names, okay? So with that, let me turn to introducing our stellar public servants, Senator Brian Benjamin and Assemblyman Michael Blake. I'm going to tell you just a little bit about both of them, and then I will turn the microphone over first to Senator Benjamin and then to Assemblyman Blake. First, I want to tell you that we love these guys. That's the most probably unprofessional way I can present it, but we love these guys because they do the people's work. Senator Benjamin represents the Assembly Senate District 30, which includes Harlem, East Harlem, and the Upper West Side. He was born in Harlem, and he is now chair of the Committee of Budget and Review, and he's also a member of the following committees in the Senate: Codes, Finance, Health, Rules, and Transportation. Assemblyman Michael Blake represents District 79 in the Bronx, which includes Concourse Village, Morrisania, Melrose, Belmont, Claremont, and East Tremont. He was born in the Bronx, and he's chair of the subcommittee on Mitchell-Lama housing, and he's a member of the Committee on Banks, Corrections, Elections Law, Government Operations, Housing, and Veterans Affairs. He's also a member of the Black, Puerto Rican, and Hispanic and Asian American Caucus and the Puerto Rican Hispanic Task Force. There's a lot more that I can say about both of them, but we have a little bit of time, and I want to give each of them an opportunity to make a few comments before we go to our family members' presentations. So with that, Senator Benjamin, take it away.
First of all, thank you, Sophia. I want to thank AFJ for being on the front lines of this important conversation around incarceration in our community. I'll be brief because I want to hear the family stories and respond in any way you would like me to. Let me just say a couple of things. One, we right now are seeing in the streets of New York, NYPD having a two-tier policy. One way of policing social distancing uptown and another way of policing it downtown. Uptown, we get thrown to the floor and get knees on their head. Downtown, they get cafe lattes and masks. So we already know in the outside community, the two-tiered system. So it is very concerning, and many of us are very scared about what's happening behind bars. And because it's out of sight, out of mind for some people, it's important that with voices like Danny Glover and everyone on this call, that we elevate families and we make sure that we provide results. So I want to be here to let you know, we want to be on top of this. We're concerned about masks being distributed. We're concerned about PPE. We're concerned about the amount of COVID-19 numbers. We already know in the Black and brown community that our numbers are way off the charts. So we want to make sure we have the same amount of facts and as it relates to our prison system. We are very concerned about what's happening in our nursing homes. So it's all of this is tied. Black people are under threat across the board, and it's my job and Assemblymember Blake's job to do what we can to turn the tide to make sure that our community gets the respect and the results that it deserves. So I'll stop there. Happy to participate and answer questions later if that's of interest.
Thank you so much, Senator. Assemblyman Blake, joined us. Assemblyman, are you there?
I am here, Sophia.
Okay, please welcome, and please give us a few remarks before we turn to the presentations by our family members.
Well, first, just good afternoon, everybody. To Sophia, great to see you. Of course, Brother Glover, good to see you again. Of course, to Brother Senator Benjamin, always grateful for you and everybody on the line. We are here because we understand that our people are not getting the justice that they need. Plain and simple. And the fact is, if we're demanding the opportunities of someone to come home, someone to be safe in their home, someone to feel safe walking out on the street, someone to know that your families are going to be respected and actually get true criminal justice, There was a pandemic of poverty. There was a pandemic of injustice. There was a pandemic of institutionalized racism before coronavirus hit. And so we need to come together. Brian Stevenson has a line that has stayed with me. The opposite of poverty is not wealth. The opposite of poverty is justice. So for our Alliance of Families for Justice, we're here with you. We stand with you. We understand that there is a great urgency for the moment. I am afraid to walk outside as a Black man. You watch as someone gets tossed to the ground for having a mask or not having a mask. You're seeing families being ripped apart just as they're trying to come back together. So our responsibility now is to listen and hear from you and understand how can we be helpful as we continue to move the drum beat ahead. So God bless you, Soffiyah, for being the shero that you are and leading us. And I look forward to joining Senator Benjamin and listening to the conversation today.
Thank you so much. Thank you to both of you for all the good work that you do and for joining us today. I'm sure it serves as a source of inspiration for our family members and for their loved ones inside to know that you care and to know that you're in Albany fighting the good fight on their behalf and on behalf of all of us. As we move on to hear from our family members, I would be derelict in my responsibility if I did not tell you how extremely proud I am of all of them. I have known them for a few years now, and I have watched them evolve and grow into their power and transform the pain that they have suffered into power. And I just could not be happier that they are going to share from the heart with you today. So with that being said, first we're going to hear from Michelle. Michelle, are you ready?
I am. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. A special thank you to Soffiyah Elijah, Senator Brian Benjamin, Assemblyman Michael Blake, Danny Glover, and all of the listeners and reporters for taking the time to address this topic. I am a formerly incarcerated person, and my husband has been incarcerated for the last 17 years in various maximum security facilities across New York State. My voice speaks for the families of the incarcerated and for those behind the walls who cannot speak at this moment. Social distancing in prison, impossible, especially if a facility is on lockdown, which is what the average person would think is, quote, the best solution, unquote. In prisons across New York State, as far as the Canadian border, people are caged in a 6 by 9 foot or smaller prison cell with 30 to 50 cells side by side on a tier, with 3 to 5 tiers stacked on top of each other. The prison cells divided by metal or brick walls with open bars in the front, like cages. The noise in the block is deafening. The cacophony of odors is nauseating, with little or no ventilation, and the constant tension of pending violence from guards or the incarcerated lingers in the atmosphere like a thick fog. Built to stack human on top of human in cages and have them file down tight, airless corridors, shoulder to shoulder, where healthcare is already below standards and in countless instances inhumane or non-existent, despite the outward lies to the public. This is the New York State prison system, a place designed for cruel and unusual punishment with the facade of rehabilitation. Now add the coronavirus into this mixture for a deadly cocktail of even more isolation, anxiety, paranoia, depression, overall mental anguish, turmoil, physical illness, and in some cases, defeat. The mental health toll on the incarcerated is already at an extreme level without this added health threat. Now add COVID-19. Due to COVID-19, programs, incarcerated, quote, jobs, unquote, are taken away or closed. Mental health services discontinued. Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous meetings discontinued. Visits non-existent. There has been a significant increase in brutality on the incarcerated by the guards. Why? Because who is watching? Who is coming to visit? No one. Lawyer and legal contact is now limited or non-existent. Food packages from loved ones are scarce or finally arrive by mail rotten and therefore must be discarded. The extremely sparse, non-existent healthcare for the incarcerated is not cracking under COVID-19 because they just aren't doing anything for us on the inside, behind the prison walls. The vast majority of us who do get COVID-19 in prison will never know because testing is not the norm, as we are left to shiver it out with high fevers in the prison cell and hope to make it out alive. And luckily, many have, but sadly, many have not. And those true numbers will never be known because testing and honest reporting is not the priority. And those who are left behind in the cells next to us don't get protected or tested either. Shifting healthy people into sick areas or, quote, quarantine tiers, unquote, and sick people into the healthy tiers is the norm. Because who is watching and who really cares? We are all just sitting caged ducks for COVID-19 and the repercussions that follow. An article in The Guardian stated that for people with depression, corona is a double crisis. The United Nations has announced a mental health illness crisis related to COVID-19. On May 17, 2020, Governor Cuomo in his daily address stated that New Yorkers are experiencing an extraordinary mental health crisis. They posed the question, what happens when your loved ones are dying and you can't visit them? How are you really doing with the health threat of COVID-19 looming? The incarcerated and the family members of the incarcerated pose the exact same questions, yet with the understanding of even more extreme conditions, prison. And how is this being addressed? Well, one benefit from this COVID-19 pandemic, Albany now realizes that men and women should be afforded the opportunity to bathe every day instead of 3 times per week, as policy originally stated. But who is really watching or upholding this new rule? Governor Cuomo, Albany, you can make things better. Provide authentic, humane, timely medical care and treatment. Provide masks, not handkerchiefs that are too small to tie around the head or face. Why do outside organizations have to donate masks when the prison industrial complex manufactures and provides many of the clothes people wear? Provide adequate cleaning supplies and the oversight that these supplies are actually being placed out and made available for use by the prison population. Provide adequate PPE for the incarcerated people who do work in the so-called infirmaries that exist in some facilities or on the, quote, quarantine blocks, unquote. Allow for food packages to be dropped off at the facilities so families do not have to swallow unaffordable shipping costs only for food packages to arrive weeks later spoiled and damaged because visitors or family brought packages were and are one of the major lifelines to fresh food and nutritional survival of the incarcerated. Double the monthly weight limit for food packages from only 35 pounds per month to 70 pounds or more per month, and increase the amount of times a food package can be received from 2 times a month to 4 times a month. Thin out the population and reduce the number of people who are incarcerated in New York State. There are many who have served their time for decades and should be considered for release, as many sentences are simply exorbitant, excessive, and serve what purpose, since the New York State Department of Corrections is not rehabilitative, but only punitive, destructive to the human psyche, body, and spirit. But who is really watching? All of these things can be said to be implemented, but with no oversight at each facility. These are just words that carry no meaning, and no one is watching to enforce the proper care and changes. Behind bars, closed cell doors, and tall walls exists a population of humanity that is the last to be talked about, cared about, thought about, or heard, because these are the voices of the incarcerated, whose words are silenced and, quote, lives don't matter, unquote, except to those who still love them, their family and close friends. Yet to everyone, I say, we should all care, especially to our government, Governor Cuomo. Make a difference, make changes happen. Let all New Yorkers and the nation be proud of you. As many philosophers have written, quote, the degree of civilization in a society can be judged by entering its prisons, and the greatness of a nation can be judged by how it treats its most disenfranchised members, unquote. What do the answer to these questions say about New York State? What does the neglect and disregard say about New York State? Governor Cuomo, Albany. Make changes a reality. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Michelle. That was very moving. I know that you are going to have to leave soon, so I'm going to ask Senator Benjamin and Assemblyman Michael Blake and Danny Glover if you have any reflections or questions for Michelle before she has to leave us.
I'll definitely start. I was given the floor to my brother Glover if he wanted to start, but I can start.
No, you go ahead, Brian.
Okay. First of all, that was incredibly powerful. So I want to just thank you for putting that on our spirit. I'm actually still digesting. But let me just ask you a question. So when you think about sort of it, one of the things that we're focused on very much is, okay, we want to make sure we have masks in the community. We want to make sure there's adequate social distancing in the community. We want to make sure that we have adequate food, all the things that we need to make sure that's happening in the community. You've made a very powerful statement that that is not happening in the jails, and we agree. Let me ask you a question. I heard a couple of your recommendations, but do you have recommendations as it relates to what who should be released, sort of early release? We just heard, what was it, Michael Cohen? I heard Michael Blake. He's being released. The guy who was the campaign chairman, I've got his name at the moment, he was released. All these other folks are being released. Do you have sort of thoughts around criteria of who should be released and who shouldn't be released at this time, or do you, that we can consider?
I do. I think that what's being focused on is people who are close to their parole, et cetera, et cetera. I think that the people who are forgotten are the people who have served decades, a lot of time already behind bars, regardless of their crime. When you give somebody a sentence like 25 years to life, 40 years to life, even 15 to life, a person changes a lot between the time they go into that prison until the time that they quote unquote come up for parole. And I think that that is something that is not looked at in this society. I think that that is not taken into account. I think that there should be some laws. I know there are a few things on the table pending, but I think there should be more effort put behind letting people out who have served a lot of time, because the research has shown that people who have served such long sentences have a very low recidivism rate. People who are older also have a low recidivism rate. So in my opinion, I'm not saying that any of the other groups or any of the other options should be negated. Of course, that is not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that consideration should be taken to people who do have a lot of time and who have served at least half or more of that time. And I also don't think that so-called violent crimes should be eliminated from that option as well, because yes, you have people who are convicted of murder, things like that. But again, circumstances, right? Circumstances to each person's crime, circumstances to each person's who they are at this point, what they've done while incarcerated, as harsh as it's been, people still survive and people change. So I think that when we put all of the options on the table, everyone should be considered, because when we speak about that, then when we speak about letting people out who are very close to their parole or only have a short amount of time, we're leaving behind a large group of people, a large group of men and women who are living their lives and who are good people, but who have been locked up for 10, 20, 17, 30 years. And that's, to me, unacceptable in a modern society. And I can speak from my personal knowledge, like knowing women when I was in there who had been down already for 15 years, and all they wanted to do was help those who were coming in new, and I think that we forget that people are human, regardless of how much time the so-called law puts down that they should spend behind bars. So I think that should be something that should be on the forefront of everyone's mind.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It'll just be first, thank you, my sister, for sharing your words about you and your loved one. It's kind of just surreal
You're
to
welcome.
even
Thank you.
So can you just give us a sense of what is happening on the inside when it comes to the point, because you started to talk about it, of someone is ill, they have the shakes, they get cold. Like, give us a sense of something that is blatantly not being redressed that we need to immediately work on from our side itself. One, and then two, guess what is happening for the mental health of it, right? And like I'm just trying to grasp that. I mean, the dynamics are obviously not easy at all, so it'll be helpful to understand on both of those questions if you can share that with us.
Sure. Well, it's a complicated issue because you see, the system isn't set up to support or help, really. So in terms of the healthcare, though, from what I've heard, from what different people that I've spoken to who are on the inside, I know for a fact that testing obviously is not happening, right? If you get sick or if you have a high fever and you happen to tell someone, or you happen to like have a crisis where you fall out from the fever, right? In the mess hall, fall out from the fever, or wherever you are, fall out, you're automatically taken to so-called quarantine block, okay? Thrown in that cell with no sheets, no mattress, no nothing, until your stuff gets thrown in with you. And from what I've heard, people are literally sitting there on a metal bunk, shivering with 103-degree fever, 100 whatever degree fever, with no intervention, so to speak, right? From what else I've heard is that, again, it's this idea of just like powering through whatever your problem is. So people who are out in the yard, they all of a sudden may not see someone. Oh, and then it's said, oh, no, that person, they're sick, you know? And so then is it going to be known if they're going to see that person again? And then maybe a few days later, and not necessarily 14 days, right? Just a few days later, they'll see the person and they'll ask the person, so how you doing? They were like, yeah, man, you know, I was in there. I had a fever. I was shivering. I was left, you know, that's it. In terms of what happened, and then the person is asked, well, do you have coronavirus, right? Because everybody's nervous. Everybody's paranoid. Do you have the coronavirus? Nobody knows, you know? Well, the answer could be, oh yeah, well, you know what? They gave me a chest x-ray, but I didn't get the results, or nah, nothing happened to me. I just in there shivering, had the fever. I can't tell you, don't know. So I think that's the reality. People don't know what's happening. Are people possibly getting sick with a regular cold? Yeah, it's possible. But in terms of the healthcare, nothing proactive is being done except for this idea of separating people somehow on a quarantine block. And that is not necessarily in every facility. I can't speak for every facility. In terms of the other things I've heard is that sometimes people are taken out of their cell and they don't know where they're taken to, right? So it's just, that person was my neighbor. I don't know where they are. They're gone. Oh, I heard they died. You know what I'm saying? And then meanwhile, they're left, everyone else around there is left wondering and fearful of like, well, did this person have the coronavirus? Did they not? In terms of the official testing, we know that's not happening. There's multiple horror stories about cover-ups, you know, saying that this person died for whatever reason, and then, but it might not be the reason. In terms of, but it's complicated because I know for a fact that some people have said, well, if I get a fever, I'm not saying anything because I refuse for them to drag me out of my cell and throw me into another cell. Like, that's inhumane treatment, right? So it's a complicated situation. I think what needs to happen is people need to be, the actual medical professionals need to be brought in. It shouldn't be left to corrections, and proper medical care should happen where people are given comfortable accommodations when you don't feel good. Nobody wants to be sitting on a metal bunk with no sheets, no nothing, and 100-something degree fever. In terms of mental health, from the numerous people I've spoken to, it doesn't happen. It's not happening anymore. Like they want to try to speak to somebody, but the staff is sparse. Again, mental health medications, although certain medications are supposed to be given out, like they've cut back on all of these call outs. From what I'm hearing, mental health, which is nothing new, is not being addressed enough. And it's even heightened now with this situation, because if you think about how paranoid people are out here, imagine being caged in a cell, not knowing what's really going on outside, but somebody's coughing, guards are coughing, people are sneezing, and you're all breathing the same air. So the mental health aspect, along with the isolation and not being able to see your loved ones or speak to people, is huge and definitely does need to be addressed. And again, cutting programs, cutting activities, that impacts mental health. Making people lock in, that impacts mental health. People will think, oh, if it's locked down, if you lock the jail down, then you won't be able to spread it. No, actually, if you keep locking the jail down, people have mental health crisis. It's better for people to be able to move, go outside, interact, do what they have to do, and then you still need to control, with the proper PPE, the spread and things like that.
I don't have anything to add to the questions that we've had thus far from Senator Blake and certainly Brian. But I think the fact that these stories are available to us is a call to action, and that call to action has to be an urgency within that call to action. And it takes us as citizens who have a voice and those who are empowered to say something, to really say something and knock as hard as we can on the doors that need to be knocked on. But I'm sure there were other things that we'll be able to contact, so I can contextualize and also talk about in reference to the work that needs to be done, that's imperative that it be done.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle, for
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
We
Thank
send
you.
our love to you and your loved one inside. And we are going to now move to Carol H., who will share with you some reflections and her presentation. Carol.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am a volunteer with Alliance of Family for Justice, and my son is currently incarcerated. And I'm scared, not only for my son, but for all incarcerated young men, women, children that's incarcerated and cannot find no way out than being stuck on each other. Como said that we're supposed to isolate and distance ourselves, but how can you distance yourself inside a facility? There's no tests being done. So like the young lady said, Michelle said, even if they have it, they don't even know if they have it because there's no tests being done. We need tests to be done. We need better masks. You understand? We need the elders, these people to be released that can be released. On Bloomberg's report, I heard Como said after he finished speaking, he said, I'm going home now to have spaghetti dinner with my daughters. Can you imagine that? Yet still there's people inside the facility that can be home to have dinner with their family, and yet still they're afraid of death. They are in this locked up place, afraid of dying. Can you imagine? We're out here, we are dying one after the other. So can you imagine being cooped up in some place like that? Every day you wake up, you're wondering if it's today is the day that I'm going to die. This is not cool. It's not the right thing to do. this test, we have heard that this disease is killing, this virus, this man-made virus, is killing Black and Latina, Black and brown people more than anything else. And the facility is made up of mostly what? Okay? I'm telling my son that if anything happened to him, there's no one to take care of him. There's no way he can find, they're not gonna test him. They're gonna put him, like Michelle said, in a cage by himself. I'm a mother. We all that are incarcerated members, we all love our kids. Just like Okoma love his daughter and he's gonna go home and sit down and have spaghetti dinner with his daughter. Just like how he was upset with his brother when his brother visited his mother and said you could have given something to mom. Okay, we all love our family just like how you love your family, Kuma. We don't want them to die. Stop playing Russian roulette with our children. Stop it. Get them some help. Get them the mask. Get them hand sanitizer. Please, for God's sake. I'm gonna read a card my son sent me for Mother's Day. You know, you think that they're all this angry people. That's not true. If you treat them right, they're fine. They're all. Everybody make mistakes. Listen, if we was to go, I know we only got 5 minutes, Sophia, and I told you I'm sorry. I don't want to go for my 5 minutes. If we was to think back of everything we did in our life, each of us would be in jail. If you think about it, okay? Because we all made mistake in our life. These men, women, boys, children make mistake in their life. They don't deserve to die of COVID-19 when they can be done about it. Okay, I'm nervous, I'm sorry. This is a card my son wrote me for Valentine's. I have the Mother's Day card, but that's a longer one. Dear Mom, if Valentine's Day represents a day of love, then you are my only true Valentine. I love you every day of known life. Happy Valentine's Day to my mom. Come on, we need to do something. Mr. Cuomo, let me tell you something. Most of those incarcerated, we can vote, okay? We have voters' right. So you need to help our loved one inside the facility and help them now, not next week, not next month. You said you're testing all your correction officer. But what sense does it make that you're testing your correction officer and you are still sending back into the same zone? You have to test our loved ones too. You have to give them good equipment, masks, and sanitizer. I mean, come on, good God Almighty. I'm sorry, guys. Okay, that's it. Thank you for listening to my rant. I am so sorry, but I am emotionally stressed over what's going on with our loved ones inside the facility. They're talking about mental health. What do you think it's doing to the family members that's sitting home wondering if today your loved one inside can get COVID-19? What do you think that mental is doing to that family member? Okay, thank you for listening. I'm sorry. Thank you for listening.
Carol, thank you for sharing. No apologies necessary at all. Thank you. We're going to now hear from Donna.
Hey, Sophia, can I say something really quickly? Really quickly. I want to reinforce what you just said. Carol, please do not apologize. Your voice is important and more important, in my opinion, than any other voice. Everyone else, we listen to them talk and rant and rave for an hour. I'd rather hear you sharing your story that is so moving, and it really needs to wake us all up right now. I don't want you to apologize for a second. You take all the time you need to say what you need to say because the world needs to hear what you are saying right now. So I just wanted to put that in your spirit. You sound Jamaican. My dad's Jamaican, so I had to throw that in there. You know, you do your thing.
And I'm a citizen. I can vote.
That's right. I know.
Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't mean to do that, but I don't want us apologizing. Black people have been apologizing for too long. Enough with the apologies. We need to tell our truth and make things happen.
Thank you. I couldn't agree with you more. Okay, next we will hear from Donna. Donna, are you ready?
I always say I was born ready, but after listening to my dear sister Carol, I had to step back a moment because listening to Michelle, Carol, everything you said embodies my whole platform. So I'm going to just cut to the chase of who I am. Senators Benjamin and Blake, my voice after a while may sound familiar to you. I've come to the Capitol and I have screamed to the top of my lungs on the golden $1 million staircase, screaming out for compassion and to listen to our stories and see our faces and vote on our bills that we are trying to get passed in legislation. First of all, I'm a nana. I'm a mother. I'm 64 years old. As far as me being ambiguous and clandestine about who I am, it's really too late for that. I've done too many of these Zoom calls. I'm an organizer in Western New York for a criminal justice organization, release aging people in prison. I'm also affiliated with our own Soffiyah Elijah Alliance of Families for Justice. That organization is near and dear to my heart because it cares about us. My daughter also is serving 15 years to life. Until recently, I couldn't even say that word at the end of the sentence. But now that I know that that life sentence could very well mean a death sentence, I'm screaming at the top of my lungs because I didn't send my daughter to die. My daughter's 44 years old. She had a stroke. She had heart surgery. She's a mother of 4 and a grandmother of 2. At my age, I've been called to look after my grandchildren. It's something that we've done for generations. When you talk about mental health, she has 2 children who are challenged. And that's a great responsibility to fall on me and her. She's worrying about what's going on the outside with me and her children. And she's worrying about not even so much herself, but for the other women who are incarcerated with her, like Darlene, Lulu, Benson Say, who much to my chagrin has the title of being the first woman to die from COVID-19 in New York State. Could have been avoided. Could have been avoided. Earlier this morning, we were rallying. We need you to get back into legislation by any means necessary. Look at the bills. Pass these bills. Elder parole, fair and timely parole. Solitary confinement is torture, it's murder. And this is the prognosis for someone who is nigh unto death. Once they say, I'm sick, I don't feel good, I can't get up. Put them in solitary housing? Are you kidding me? Give them Tylenol and water. That is the medication that is prescribed. These are human beings, just like Carol's son. My daughter's magnificent. My life. There's a lot of women behind bars for whatever reason. I could trade places easily. We've always been abused, misused, considered second-class citizens. We become scapegoats, railroaded, if you will, forgotten about 20, 30, 40 years. I'm advocating for my daughter's friends because these people are older. They serve so much more time. I see people in there my age, my mothers. I'm one of 5 generations born on U.S. soil. And he dismisses us. He says this is not an issue. It's 16 or more. We don't even know. You can't keep track. You have the power, and not for anything, Senator Benjamin, I sat across from you, September, Columbia University Law School. We were all sitting around a table. I was an insignificant African-American woman that didn't open her mouth. I was sitting quietly in the back, but I will not be silenced because there's so many that people have forgotten about and won't speak out for. You can't shut us all up. And we're not going to stop fighting. This is intense. And in the words of Dr. Fullerlove, Dr. Robert Fullerlove, I was on a Zoom call with him. This is common sense. Common sense. I know you're worried about what type of people we're going to let out. But those people are still out here running around, never been caught. We never know at what moment. I always say we're all just a fool away from making a bad decision that could ruin the end of our lives. Me and my daughter, we used to do stand-up comedy. I try to laugh to keep from crying, but I don't have much to laugh about now. But Mother's Day, we had an action, along with a lot of organizations, Vocal New York, etc., Parole Preparation Project in front of Bedford Hills. And that was right around the time that Lulu passed away. So it was very emotional. My daughter's taking college classes and she's working since she's been there. She sends me names of people who don't have anyone to advocate for them. Mommy, can you send them a package? Mommy, can you put some money on the books? God makes a way out of no way. People from all over hear my story and they help. My daughter wrote an essay. And I'm just going to read this, and then after this, I won't be able to say anything else. So please just bear with me. I better drink something first. This is tea. My mom is my superhero. My mother, Donna L. Robinson, is my role model. I have watched her be her best during the worst of times. Being my mama's child was like being at an amusement park. Sometimes it was a wild roller coaster ride. When the whoopings came, I never whooped her. Other times, it was like being on the Ferris wheel, enjoying the ride. It is funny how I used to say, I do not want to be like her when I grow up. But once I had children of my own, I became her. It was like looking in a mirror. Now that I'm in prison, I've learned to appreciate her more. I'm proud of her. Counseling every day. She stopped her pity party she had during my first year in jail. She got up. She joined release aging people in prison. Joining RAP has been a blessing in my mother's life. Joining a whole lot of other organizations has saved her mother's life. She is passionate about fighting for prisoners' rights, and I admire her tireless efforts. Her tireless efforts. She puts in working all the while taking care of my children and grandchildren. She is Superwoman without the leotards. When I talk to her on the phone and she tells me about her conference calls or newspaper articles and rallies, I feel so proud of her. As if she's the child and I'm the mother. My mother gives me the strength and courage to keep hope alive that I will return home someday. The very God she taught me about is the very God I see in her. It amazes me to see her grow through this difficult 4-year journey of my incarceration. Before my incarceration, my mom and I used to do stand-up comedy where we live. And I used to feel like I stole that dream from her. We were having so much fun. And I had to self-sabotage the both of us by getting my head stuck in a pickle jar. Now, I don't carry that guilt anymore. I see my being in prison has made a positive impact, not only in her life, but in a lot of others around me. And she's met some great people doing this journey, and they're helping her get through it. The phone calls now are less crying and more laughing. She's an amazing mother to be able to deal with all of this. And I wouldn't trade her for all the tea in China. And I feel the same way about my little green pumpkin. She's my life. And I would ask that you would try with all that you have in you. I called and I spoke to someone in Andrea Stewart Cousins' office this morning. Please, do the right thing. Do the right thing. Let's look at everybody for who they are. We all change. I'm not the same person I was before August of 2019 when I was visiting my daughter and Valerie Gator passed away 61 years after serving 41 years in New York State. It's murder. And it has to stop because you're killing our generation. Thank you for allowing me this platform. And thank you all for embracing me, especially you, Soffiyah, and my rap family. I love you.
Thank you, Donna. God, we love you too.
Thank you, Donna.
Thank you so much. Next, we are going to hear from Frantz and Chastity. Are you ready?
I mean, after that, it's so emotional because I know Donna, I know Carol, and I'm gonna let Chad speak for a couple of seconds, then I'll get back on because it's extremely emotional for me right now because I know what my mother been through.
Okay, hello everybody. Thank you for this opportunity. This is my dad, and as the daughter, my dad was incarcerated for 15 years, and as a daughter of somebody who spent time in prison, there was a lot of ups and downs, just worrying about like his well-being, period. And every day, like since this has happened, I mean, he's gonna hear this for the first time, but I've been thanking God every day that he's home. Like we don't have to deal with this at this moment. And just thinking about, sorry, I'm getting emotional too. Just thinking about all of the families and just knowing the conditions that exist when my dad had regular health issues. He had kidney stones and the neglect that was there and just the issues that are present in the healthcare system in prison on a normal basis. Just, I can't even fathom like what's going on there. And just, I mean, we're not even outside in the world right now. There's so many difficulties for families. So just imagining what's going on in those prisons and just knowing how they're not being, the fact that the government has chosen to take these people's freedom and chosen to be responsible for these people's lives and are not holding up to that is very disturbing to me. If you're going to hold yourself, if you're going to take away somebody's freedom and you're going to house them in prison, then you need to make sure that you're giving them everything that they need. You need to make sure that people are safe, that people are being taken care of, and that you are doing, which, I mean, we already know they have not been holding up to what they say they're supposed to do in prisons already. It's not rehabilitative. But in a crisis like this, like everyone has mentioned, we're all family members. We're all human beings. Like, it's just humane. It's just the right thing to do. It's just a human thing to do.
And like my daughter said, I was sentenced to life twice. In 2016, President Obama commuted my sentence, and he gave me this opportunity to be home with my family. You know, so the clemency power is extremely huge. And Governor Cuomo and Donald Trump, they have that opportunity to give clemency. You know, throughout my incarceration, I listened to Michelle speak, and yes, we help the younger people, guys coming in. You know, when you commit a crime when you were young, and I was sent away for a nonviolent drug conspiracy, and I was given life twice for a nonviolent drug conspiracy with no prior conviction. And by the grace of God and putting President Obama in place, a lot of us would have this opportunity to be home with our families. Since I've been home, I started 2 organizations. You know, I worked with Soffiyah very, very closely. I gave out, you know, I had a food bank a couple of weeks ago. And when I spoke to Soffiyah, you know, being away and looking at Carol and looking at Donna and my mom here, right? And when I go out and shop, and I recently lost my dad, when I go out and shop for my mother, and I see all these Black women fending for themselves, it kills me, because I know part of the problem is that there's millions of young Black men in prison. There's millions of young Black men that's incarcerated that doesn't have the opportunity I have today to go to a grocery store and get my mother out of harm's way, because we know this virus is taking old people. We understand what it's doing to the older, our community, the wisdom that's being robbed from our community, because parents just do not have their young sons and their young daughters to go out and do what is necessary for them. And these are the things that break my heart. Spending 15 years in there, like Chad said, I understand that it's inadequate medical. Ibuprofen and Tylenol is the cure-all for everyone. You go in there, regardless of what you say is going on with you, they give you some ibuprofen and Tylenol and tell you to come back weeks later. So with all these other underlying conditions, I don't know if people realize that there's no fresh food being served in prison. So it's canned food. So canned food, we all know that it's sodium based. So you have so many young men that's dealing with high blood pressure. They're dealing with high blood pressure because it's the little things that people don't think about what's going on in the institutions. So we know high blood pressure is a problem, especially with COVID-19. We know that that's an issue, that if you're dealing with high blood pressure and you get this virus, your chance of surviving becomes a lot slimmer than everyone else's. So these are the things that I want people to think about every single day that's not going on in the average person's mind, unless you have somebody that's incarcerated. Like I said, Governor Cuomo, he has the clemency power. President Donald Trump has the clemency power. And there's so many young men like myself that has come home, like Michelle spoke about earlier. We come home and we don't recidivate. Mm-hmm. It's hell. Prison is hell. So the myth that people they want to go back, that's furthest from the truth. When guys recidivate and women recidivate, it's because the opportunities and the resources that are lacking, and they're trying to survive. It's about survival, putting the proper things in place for us to just survive. And that's why, Soffiyah, I can't thank you enough for putting these platforms together. I thank you for working with Dream Deferred, working with the organization that I have. I want to thank everybody that's on this call, Mr. Glover, Senator Benjamin, we've met a couple of times, Mr. Blake, and everyone else that's listening today. To the people that don't understand what's going on in the prison system, I want you, it's a call to action. I want you to really look into what's going on. Mm-hmm. When you go shop today or tomorrow over the weekend, look around you and see all these Black women that's out there, all these older Black women and men that's out there shopping, and ask yourself, why is this so? Ask yourself, because these are the things that people don't understand that's going on. The natural order gets disrupted. This is where the issue is. So when you send a young man, if it wasn't by the grace of President Obama that I'm sitting here today, right, I would be languishing in a prison with my mother crying, my sister crying, my daughter crying, all my children, my family, and all the Black women. When I did the food pantry, I had about 120 older Black women come get food. And that's heartbreaking. That's heartbreaking when you really understand what's going on. Mm-hmm. So these are the things that I want you, everyone on the call, to share with everyone else. Look around you, because the visual is there. You might not have thought about it, but look around you and see what's really going on. How everyone is infected by this criminal, this mass incarceration, this system that's just devastating us, that's designed to devastate this population. Mm-hmm. Chas, would you like to say anything else?
Yeah, I just, I totally agree with everything. With everything that you just said. And, the system is just designed to oppress us. And in the global pandemic, it just highlights everything that's wrong with the system. And I know that we all need to use our voice as we're doing now. Thank you, Soffiyah, for this platform. And thank you everybody for listening as well. We have power in our voices, and I just ask that everybody, if you like my dad just said, like just pay attention and just educate yourself, because awareness and education and getting to know, like, you know, it's an out of sight, out of mind thing, and it was designed that way on purpose, because once you distance people and you know, it's kind of like, oh yeah, that's over there, but like once you really start to pay attention to what's going on, it brings it's designed to take away the humanity, to make you feel like you're not a part of that. But we all are, and we all have to do what's necessary to be human, and just to save lives, and to do what we can do, all the things that we can do to like just make the best out of a situation that's out of our control, but that we do have control over in the prison system. Well, the government.
There's one more thing I want to touch on, Senator Benjamin, that Michelle had brought up, because you spoke about Michael Cohen coming home. You know, I had an opportunity. I started at level 7 maximum security prison. I ended up in a camp, and that's very, very rare to do. So I touched every level of the prison security system. And what people don't talk about is, and this is very important, I wanted to touch on it, is that there's people that's inside of a medium security prison. So Michael Cohen and these guys are in camps, right? So they're in a low security prison. So this is where they pay attention to, the low security. But there's guys that's inside of medium security, even maximum security prisons, that have the security level to be in a camp. But the issue is they don't send us to the camp. You know, the higher the security level, the browner it gets. You understand? So a camp is light, a maximum security is very dark. So the higher the security level, this is where you start to see that it's less white people, it's more black people, it's more brown men. So those are the institutions that people don't look at. But there are plenty men and women in those security levels that should be afforded the opportunity to go home, because their security, their public safety, it might be one public safety factor or one management variable that's holding them there because of something they may have done when they were 16, but it's holding them in a higher security prison. And it's designed that way because when you were 16 years old and you might have had a crime, or 18 years old, you might have did something, you know, that, I mean, robbed something, you know, maybe did something that something really stupid when you were young, but that holds you up in a high security institution, which now minimizes the opportunity for you to get a second chance to go home because you're not in a camp. So what they do first, they look at the camp level, the lowest security level, which, like I said, is lighter, because I had the opportunity to come from a maximum to a minimum. So I got to see everything. And what is even crazy about the system is that, and anyone can do their investigation, if you go into a low security, right, such as Fort Dix, you'll see it very light. But you have guys that committed crimes, men that's light, that committed crimes that they're supposed to be in medium and maximum security prisons. But they say it's because of a mind deficiency, something that, you know, that an illness or sickness that caused them to commit this crime, and that's the reason that they're being housed in a low security prison. These are the things that I want, and it's violent offenses. So these are the things that I want everyone to really look into. Why is a minimum security prison or a low security prison much lighter than a prison that's housing non-violent drug offenders, but they're in medium and maximums? Can't hear you, Senator. You're muted.
Oh, no. I'm letting you finish. That don't make any kind of sense. Sophia, we have got to talk about sentencing in general. Obviously, I know we're having a COVID-19 conversation, but you know, a number of the conversations that have just been mentioned don't make any sense to me. I don't understand how a nonviolent drug conspiracy, I don't care what kind of conspiracy you were conspiring, how that leads to a life sentence. To me, I can't even understand. And so I know that I just need to get better acquainted. I know Brother Blake's on the line. We got to get better acquainted with every single law and the sentencing. We have got to do sentencing reform. We just got to look at it. And I'm committed to doing it. Sophia, I'd love to talk to you more, however you want us to figure this out. But let's look at some of these laws. I don't know how people get in life imprisonment for nonviolence. That doesn't even begin to make sense. And then this issue around who gets to be in the camp versus, you know, it's supposed to be fair. As bad as it is, it's still supposed to be fair. We all know the criminal justice system has a lot of criminality in it, but it at least needs to try to be fair. So the fact that there's all these inconsistencies, we got to clean that up. And I completely agree with Chastity. Out of sight, out of mind. We've got folks in our own Black community, in our own churches, who need to hear all of this. Because, you know, for a lot of us, we watch the TV and go, oh, that person should be in jail. I mean, let's be frank, right? I mean, when I go to churches and talk about criminal justice reform, or I talk about sort of technical parole violations, try to explain that to people, why we should not have anyone incarcerated for a technical parole violation, people look at me like I'm crazy in our own community, right? So we've got our own education to do on that front, but we've really got to, we've got to dig through, we got to dig into this, and we got to dig into it now. I thank you for inviting me to hear these testimonies. They've been very powerful, and I'm here to be of service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator. You know I'm going to follow up with you. I'm not lacking in that.
Oh, let's do it. Let's make sentencing reform the #1 agenda item in the legislature. That's our issue. We've got to deal with it.
And we have to save these lives. That's our first.
Oh, I agree with you. I'm sorry. Yes. Okay.
We are over time. We are at the point where we would hear reflections from you and Assemblyman Blake, but I think we may have lost the Assemblyman. I don't know, Assemblyman Blake, if you're still on, could you speak? Okay, that sounds like he's not with us. Now, I know a number of people have sent questions in, but I also want to be mindful of people's time. Yeah. We've kind of assumed that this would happen because it's a very compelling issue. So this evening at 6 o'clock, we're going to have our monthly community organizing meeting. And I know that at some point, the Zoom information, no, that's not the right slide. The Zoom information is going to come up on the screen in a moment, and you'll be able to log in. So I hope that people who had questions and who want to continue the conversation will join us tonight. Oh, that's still not the right, there we go. That's the right slide. I hope everybody can see it. Copy down that information, please, and join us tonight from 6 to 7:30. Our board chair, Danny Glover, is going to join us. Certainly, Senator Benjamin, if you have the time and you want to join us, you're welcome to. You always are welcome to join us. And I will definitely follow up with you to further this conversation that we started. I want to particularly thank our family members for sharing such compelling and heartbreaking realities about what you're experiencing and what's happening inside. And I want to give Senator Benjamin and Danny Glover an opportunity to close out with some reflections. And then I hope to see many of you this evening at 6 o'clock on our Zoom meeting. I think, Senator Benjamin, I'll ask you if you have any final thoughts, and then I'll give the final word to Danny Glover.
Sure. I think it's very important that we see and hear each other, and that we listen to each other and we communicate. I'm honored that you have invited me on this call, Soffiyah, and I definitely, with your permission, would like, I unfortunately can't do tonight because I have a scheduling conflict, but I would like to have a follow-up where we can, talk about the nitty-gritty of some of these, kind of delve into them, each issue a little more in depth, and look at the laws we have on the books and what needs to change, and obviously look at sentencing reform within that context. But as it relates to COVID-19, I am definitely in agreement that we need to do better in the state. I think we really have some issues in terms of particularly folks with technical parole violations who I believe should not be incarcerated, and we should be doing a lot more. And I want to work with you to do more of that. Just know, on behalf of myself and Assemblymember Blake, we're here and we're going to fight to make sure that we have a more just system for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Benjamin. Thank you, Donna. Thank you, Carol. As I'm stunned and yet it keeps us to be constantly stunned and knowing that there's so much work that we have to do, and certainly just to do work, but the specific work to have real formative change. And those stories, because I've been to the business of telling stories. Some of you hated me, some of the stories I was in, and some of you love me in some of the stories that I've been. But I know how powerful stories are in so many different ways. Your stories here resonate much beyond this. And as you don't have to apologize, as Brother Brian said, for anything at all. All of your stories are here. They are our call to action. They will be our call to action, continue to our call to action. And because we've now embraced those stories, inhabit those stories, and that's what this is about this. You, Chastity, and everything. That I'm so happy to be a part of this, so happy to be doing this work. And as much as I've been around mass incarceration, all three of my brothers in another generation were caught up in the crack cocaine. All three of my brothers, and that served time, all of them served time in state penitentiary and federal penitentiary. But at the same time, I got another generation of my nephews who spent time, who are incarcerated for now as well. Where do we now talk about the necessary thing that I've been in sitting settings in prison in California, where I've been with men in circles who are talking about and finding ways in which they can better heal themselves. So that process is going on. You see it in those places like this. But now the most immediate thing that we have to talk about is that how do we get our loved ones home in the midst of this pandemic, in the midst of this pandemic. But also, we need to keep hearing your story over and over, and the thousands and thousands of other stories, so that we know that every action we do, everything that we do is taking the right step to end this tragedy that's happening in our system. It's been a tragedy for decades and decades and decades and centuries, but we have to continue our fight. Right here, we're on ground zero right now in this tragedy, and we're fighting that. But most importantly is that, as I said, we have to get our loved ones home. The Alliance for Families and Justice has been extraordinary in empowering families and communities and connecting them with the voices that are necessary, connecting them who they go to the ballot box and vote for. But also, we have to have, not only we have mass meetings like this or wherever we is. This is a new tool in which we're able to use right now so we can get the word out. This is a tool that it gets to hundreds and thousands of people right now about what is happening in these stories. So know that your stories count, whether they're in New York or whether they're in California, wherever they are in the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Danny. We're looking forward to this evening's meeting. I know some of you will not be able to join us. We definitely have a call to action. Copy down the Zoom information if you have an opportunity to join us tonight. If you don't, or even if you do, in the meantime, one of the things we're asking people to do is to call Governor Cuomo's office. And I believe we have a slide that has its phone number. I've heard on the grapevine that they love to receive calls. So because they love to receive calls, we're hoping that everyone will call them 5 times a day and leave a message about your concerns that you've heard today. And then after you call, text us at 347-973-0580, 347-973-0580, and let us know that you made your 5 phone calls for that day. And then the next day, space them out, call back, and keep calling. We're asking everybody to do that through the end of May. And then this evening, as I said, we are going to have a strategy session, and we'll come up with some other ways to get the undivided attention of Governor Cuomo and the Department of Corrections and Community Supervision. I'm going to ask our host, just before we end, if you can find the slide that has the phone number for Governor Cuomo, if you could show that so people can copy that down, because I know they're anxious to start making their 5 phone calls a day. Does that show up? If not, if we can't find that, what we'll do, because I think we know how to contact
It showed up.
whoever, we can email it to everyone who participated. And you certainly can go online and find it. That's the nice thing about it. It's not a secret. You can just go to his website and find the phone number. But we'll email it to everybody. Okay.
And I can't say enough about these mothers here, Donna and Carol, and mothers. You know, I know what it was like for my mother. You know, sometimes she had to choose between visiting two of her sons who were in jail, but that love kept them going and moving them as they moved through their life and carried on their life after they were sent home, after they allowed to go home. And that love, it's amazing. I like to tell this story. I had three brothers. Two of them, one has 4 children, the other has 3 children, and the other one has out of the 8 children, 6 of them had graduated from college. All 3 of my brothers, out of the 8 children, 6 of the children, my nieces, never graduated from college, and they teaching, they doing social work, and they doing the stuff that made us all proud that they do as citizens, you know. Yes. Okay.
Thank you. So for our call to act, there's the phone number for Governor Cuomo. This is the message you want to give him. Release as many people as possible, save lives, and provide the protections for the people who are inside. Save their lives. It's the humane thing to do. It's the only right thing to do. 518-474-8390. They're waiting to hear from you now, I can tell. And we hope to see you this evening at 6 o'clock on our Zoom call. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you again for all of our participants. Thank you again, Senator Benjamin, and to Assemblyman Michael Blake. Danny, it's always wonderful to have you with us. And all of you who took time to participate in this Zoom call, I hope that you'll take the energy and the messages that you heard today and use them to first share them with other people, and I hope they'll motivate you to take action so that we can save as many lives as possible. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.